and welcome to the Global View on this Friday. I'm Andrew Gagan. Great to have you with us here at AusBiz. Let's see where we have been overnight. Positive sentiment continuing on global equity markets as President Trump's policies remain in focus after telling business leaders at the World Economic Forum that oil prices and interest rates need to fall. On Wall Street, tech stocks did take a step back after rallying sharply in the previous session. That's following Trump's announcement of a private sector $500 billion investment in AI infrastructure. Heavyweights Nvidia and Microsoft actually finished higher on the day, despite the general fall we've seen across the tech sector. In the latest fourth quarter earnings, GE Aerospace advanced after it forecast 2025 profit above estimates, and American Airlines dipped sharply after forecasting profit below expectations. Shares in health insurer Elevance rose after beating estimates for fourth quarter profit. And Electronic Arts shares plummeted after the video game publisher cut its forecast for annual bookings. And earlier, Europe's Stock 600 index hit a record high again. Well, US President Donald Trump has demanded that OPEC lower oil prices and that the world drop interest rates as he addressed the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And he warned business and political leaders that they will face tariffs if they make their products anywhere but in the US. He said, "I'll demand that interest rates drop immediately, and likewise, they should be dropping all over the world." US data showed that initial jobless claims have increased to a seasonally adjusted 223,000. That is below the previous reading. And US Treasury yields were mixed as investors sell government debt amid continued policy uncertainty from the new Trump administration. The US 2-year yield slipping to 4.28%, the 10-year rising slightly to 4.66%. Markets are pricing in zero chance that the Fed funds rate will be cut at next week's Fed meeting. And the US dollar modestly lower, that ahead of the Bank of Japan's policy decision today. Markets have already fully priced in the 25 basis point rate hike. The Aussie has risen to 62.9 US cents. And Bitcoin is trading around 104,000 US dollars. This as President Trump signed an order to create a cryptocurrency working group, which is expected to advise on digital asset policy, work with Congress on crypto legislation, and help establish Trump's promised Bitcoin reserve. Well, President Trump has told the World Economic Forum that I'm going to ask Saudi Arabia and OPEC to bring down the cost of oil. Well, that did put downward pressure on crude prices, with Brent futures around 1% lower at $78 a barrel. Copper reversing its recent trend, rising more than 0.5%, while iron ore remains around $104 US dollars a tonne, and gold easing slightly to $2,752 an ounce. So let's get across certainly what we've heard from Donald Trump, how that's affecting markets. I caught up earlier with Brad Gastwirth from Unearthing Opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a surprise here, Andrew, that he's going to go and really pump the energy space. I mean, if you look at drilling, he's definitely pro-drilling. So that's something that he wants to see increase in the United States. I think across the board on the traditional energy companies, they're going to benefit over the next few years under the Trump administration. And I think he was very loud about it with his speech. He's been talking about it, prior to being inaugurated. And I expect, again, the energy sector to do quite well in 2025.
So he has declared that energy emergency. Where does that leave investment in renewables, do you think, Brad?
Yeah, and that's a very good question, Andrew. I mean, we're looking at taking back some of the subsidies that are out there, especially on the electric vehicle side. I think you're going to still see, good infrastructure spend and build, but it's going to be without government support, at least not as much support as the Biden administration. So, I mean, clearly the world is moving more towards renewables, but, Trump and his administration is very strong on traditional energy. Also, some of these like if you look at some of these alternative energies, nuclear, et cetera, you're also going to be seeing spend. But on if you look at electric vehicles and what's going on in wind and solar, we're going to get those subsidies taken away. And it's going to be a little bit harder for those sectors to achieve some of the goals.
Well, that is despite that close relationship he apparently has with Elon Musk
Well, it's
Where does it leave Tesla?
Yeah, no, Andrew, it's such a good point too, because there's certain things that you have Musk in very strong control over. I mean, obviously, you have the solar side that Musk spent billions of dollars of his money to have Tesla purchase, and you have now these subsidies being taken away both on the vehicle side and on the solar side for Tesla from this government. But Trump is very pro crypto, which Musk is very pro for himself. And then if you look at what's happening with TikTok, I think Musk wants to buy the US TikTok asset. And I think many people want to buy it. It's a fantastic asset. And I think his close relationship, I would put him as one of the front runners to be getting that asset. So, it's sort of mixed on what's happening with the government. But you've also seen towards the end of the time before Trump got inaugurated, there was a little bit of butting of heads with some of the Republicans and Musk. Especially in some of the worldly views. So it's going to be interesting. These next few years, it's not going to lack excitement, that's for sure.
And Brad, clearly the most alarming focus for the globe at this point is what he is likely to do in regards to trade and tariffs. Is it simply the case that he is using his rhetoric at the moment to try and come up with a deal rather than necessarily following through with the threat of tariffs?
Yeah, Andrew, I think that's probably the trillion-dollar question here is which country is the first that he's going to, push these tariffs on, and how big will they be? Clearly he sort of, pointed and directed that there were going to be tariffs across the board. I think he fell a little bit short of doing that day one, but now there's certainly a lot of talk that there's going to be some tariffs introduced rather quickly and shortly. It looks like China might be getting a new tariff in the 10% range. But if you look at some of the traditional allies, and I know you and I were talking about this a little bit pre-program, I mean, you look at Canada with the US, and there's certainly going to be more tariffs going into that region, and Mexico. So at some point, you get rid of a lot of the allies, and that's not that favorable on longer term. But I do expect significant tariffs. I think that's going to, his view there is it's going to help with the debt situation here in the United States. Obviously, we have a significant debt problem, and that's just one way to help out.
Brad, another policy announcement recently was that that $500 billion investment in AI infrastructure. What did you make of that, and who are the potential winners there?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the public markets, Oracle is going to be a winner. That stock took a nice 7% rise after that announcement. But going into that question, yeah, I mean, it's a tremendous amount of money being spent in the near term. I think the commitment of $100 billion here, initially is, it's incredible. I think there's a lot of companies on the infrastructure side, but if you look at the components, Nvidia is going to certainly benefit because they're going to be ordering a tremendous amount of AI chips. I think anybody in the semiconductor space, there's so many plays. Broadcom has many, many different parts that fall around when you're building AI systems. So they're going to be benefiting memory chips. The semiconductors will benefit from that spend. And, again, 100 billion in the near term is nothing to really be shy away from. That's a big number. That's going to help out some of these companies in the near term.
So, Brad, just to reiterate, your favourite AI plays then, I mean, you mentioned Nvidia. You've also, obviously, in the past looked at the likes of Adobe. Where else are you looking?
Yeah, so I mean, if I look at my AI favorites, Alphabet is right up there. Meta is up there. Microsoft, I would say those are top three. I like Amazon a lot for many other reasons in mega cap space. But AI, the Microsoft, the Meta, and Alphabet have got to be the top three. In terms of, the component plays, Nvidia by far is the best way on the component side. Adobe, I like Adobe. I would actually focus a little bit more on Salesforce.com. CRM, I think, has a lot more upside in doing amazing things with integration with AI into their suite. And I think that's going to really help their earnings and revenue over the next few years. So I think Salesforce has a nice trajectory as well.
All right. And in fact, just as far as Amazon is concerned, a bit of news there in regards to its drone delivery, which, hasn't necessarily gone too well, has it?
Yeah, so I mean, they've been testing this out now in a few different cities. They were supposed to, bring on, I think, a handful more in 2025. So there was a few crashes, and now they're being suspended. So we're going to have to do a wait and see approach. This is a pretty big deal because I think Amazon, I believe they're right now in the lead on drone delivery technology. On the logistics side, they're doing incredibly well. With their logistics business. And I think this is the way, in the future. I mean, this is the way that you're going to see deliveries in, 10 years from now, you'll see a significant portion being delivered by drones. And, right now we need, with that accident, now there's going to be a few more requirements and hurdles to get them back up and going. But this is a small little blip in the road. This isn't a revenue contributing unit as we speak. This is something that should contribute in the future, and I expect it to. But the news I think is important because this is something that people get pretty hyped up on in terms of next generations and other business lines for the company. So the suspension, I'm not making a big deal of it. It's part of the business, but I expect it to get back up there in the next several months.
So, Brad, overall, do you remain bullish on US equities, or are you perhaps wary of where those valuations are at the moment? And also, I guess, perhaps the so-called Trump honeymoon is going to come to an end?
Yeah, fantastic question, Andrew. I mean, if you look at where we are right now, valuations are incredibly high. But one thing I've said, and I stand by this comment, that valuations alone are never a reason to buy or sell a stock. And, I think, valuations sometimes look expensive on the way up and look cheap on the way down. In terms of where we are, there's still very positive fundamentals. So we can't ignore the fundamentals that we see. What scares me is when I start seeing like a market like the crypto market, when you start to talk to waiters or waitresses at restaurants or Uber drivers or people who are just standing by, they're talking about their crypto portfolio and, they're just buying these meme coins and they're doing so well. That scares me. That makes me feel like we're in a significant bubble. I'm staying away from the crypto market right here at these levels. I think the stock market right now will continue to do well through 2025. But yeah, we're approaching valuations that seem pretty outrageous, but we still have very strong fundamentals. And if we do get a little bit of a turn, that will be a big signal.
And Brad, given that volatility that Trump brings, are you remaining bullish on the precious metals?
Yeah, I probably sound like a broken record here, Andrew. Yeah, I still really like gold and silver for many reasons. I think from a hedge, they're fantastic hedges. They're great tangible assets. They've performed very well over the last several years. They've been a favorite in a portfolio of mine for the last several years, and they continue to be, a must-own in portfolios for the next several years.
Brad Gastwirth from Unearthing Opportunities. Let's check the local market just ahead of the open, looking for a positive start. SPI futures up 0.3%. Stay with us because we're going to get right across that when we get going in just a couple of minutes.